Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we're going to have a little pep in our step. You could probably imagine why, but we will have pep in our step. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. And guess what? They are finally starting to allow fans back into the stadium. Woo! So make sure you head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, we had a huge weekend for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, that's putting it lightly. And I can say with confidence that that was one of the biggest drafts we've had in this city in a very, very long time. And look, everyone was going into this draft with little to no expectations, including me. I took the Bears apathy route. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to let the Bears upset me. I'm not going to let Ryan Pace get to me. I'm just not going to let it happen. And then next thing I knew, I was texting with so many people celebrating their first round pick. And it was a pick that made headlines in a good way, because the Bears are used to making headlines in a bad way, especially recently. But almost like the snap of a finger, overnight, the feeling towards the Chicago Bears, not only from their fans, but from a national media perspective, has completely changed.
So just to recap really quickly, I want to go through my last mock because I hit one pick, which I'm proud of. So I had this with no trades, nothing. This was what my expectation of what the Bears were going to do if they stood pat, no pun intended. Number 20, Christian Darrisaw, offensive tackle, who would not have made it to them anyway. He got drafted before number 20. 52, Kyle Trask, quarterback out of Florida, who is going to replace Tom Brady sooner rather than later, I'm imagining. 83, Richie Grant, safety out of UCF. 164, Jalen Darden, who also went to the Tampa Bay Bucks, will be catching passes from Tom Brady. 204, Shakur Brown, cornerback out of Michigan State, who didn't get drafted, which I'm kind of surprised about. 208, Trey Brown, cornerback out of Oklahoma. 221, Milton Williams, defensive lineman out of Louisiana Tech. And 228, Larry Barome, offensive tackle from Mizzou. I got one right.
Hey, good for you. It might not have been the right spot, but you know what? Getting one of those players right, props to you, because people can make all the mock drafts in the world. It doesn't mean a dang thing when it comes to actual draft day, but good for you on that. I'm going to give you a round of applause. Good work. Good work.
Golf clap. All right, so we were all just sitting there watching this draft, and I think you said it best, is everyone had low expectation because we're all convinced until 7:30, 7:45 on last Thursday night, we all thought that Ryan Pace was a dumb huckleberry.
Yeah, and I think we all expected something very, very drastic out of desperation if he was going to do something, because, I mean, really the way I looked at it was, I expect something either A, stupid, or B, just something not exciting. You know, I mean, okay, you get an offensive lineman, great, at number 20. Okay, I mean, yeah, it's technically a need. It's not bad, but it's not like something uber exciting. That is it was one of those two things. And I mean, really, I spent that first, I don't know, hour or so, whatever it was, of that draft, flipping between the draft and the Cubs game. I'm like, all right, I'll watch the Cubs in Atlanta, and I'll watch the NFL draft, yada, yada. But you know what I'm going to tell you? It's kind of funny how this all went down for me. I flipped over to the Cubs game right after 10. And you probably know where I'm going with this. So the Bears made the trade up when I think this was happening at the same time. It might have been later, but from what I remember, I was watching Jake Marisnick hit a home run. Either way, I was watching the Cubs game, and all of a sudden my phone blows up with friends going, oh, here we go. The Bears are trading up. I'm like, oh, crap. So I immediately go back, and you see that they're on the clock. And I'm saying to myself, it's going to be Justin Fields or Mac Jones. It's got to be. Because I think the key part of this draft for the Chicago Bears, the absolute key part to all this, was the Denver Broncos passing up on Fields.
Well, you had the Denver Broncos and the Carolina Panthers both passing on quarterbacks, which was huge. I don't think anybody was expecting both of those teams to not take quarterbacks.
Well, I was wondering about the Panthers because weren't they the ones that just got
Sam Darnold
from Sam Darnold? Yeah, and I mean I know that's more of a project, but I mean there was obviously reason to believe that they could take a quarterback even if you did make the move for Darnold. But I mean, hey, after this, it appears pretty obvious to me that Darnold is the guy they're going to try to make work going forward. But yeah, I mean, I thought Denver was the really big one because Denver looks like they're the team that's a quarterback away from being great. And maybe they still can get a great quarterback. Wink, wink, wink.
And honestly, I think, I mean, this is my personal outsider opinion. I have a feeling that they didn't draft a quarterback because they still are hopeful that they're going to get a quarterback. Wink, wink, wink.
Yeah, and I heard this quarterback that they like recently hosted Jeopardy.
I heard that he was at the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, and he looked like Nicolas Cage from far away, and he was with, I don't know if he was actually with him, but Tom Brady was there, and he looked like one of the Nazis from Raiders of the Lost Ark whose face is melted.
He looked like he was going to go after Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, he did. He did. I'm like, I saw that outfit. I'm like, man, you look like a movie villain or something. But honestly, props to him for rocking that look.
He's filthy rich and has a hot wife. Can retire for the rest of his life whenever he wants, and he's 40 years old. Like, props to him.
I mean, there are a few people living a better life than him right now. Seriously.
Yeah. So this draft really did play out super well. Numbers 1 and 2 went exactly as everybody expected. No hiccups. You had Trevor Lawrence go 1, Zach Wilson go 2. And everybody knew that the 49ers traded up for a quarterback because you don't trade up to number 3 in this draft to not get a quarterback, especially after the crazy price they paid.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, I'm not saying Trey Lance is not going to work, but if there is a Mitch Trubisky-like move where they are taking on more of a project risk, this was the move of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't had a lot of playing time.
Right.
And he played 1 game last year, and, so you're basically going off of, and it was by far his worst game as a college athlete was the 1 game he played last year. And you're going off of what he did at, 18, 19 years old in 2019. He's got all the tools to be a great quarterback. So I'm not saying he's not. I really liked him. I wouldn't have minded him on the Bears. In fact, I would have liked him on the Bears. But I feel, if you sort of weigh risk rewards on this. Is Trevor Lawrence, the sky is the limit, and he's got a really high floor. Zach Wilson has a reasonably high floor, sky high limit. Trey Lance, sky high limit, but of those 5, he's probably the most likely to be a failure. Mac Jones, I say it all the time, he's got a very high floor, but I think he's got a measurable ceiling. And Justin Fields, I think he's got a fairly high floor, but I think he's got an unlimited ceiling as well. So my concern with the Trey Lance is, you're not going to get rewards this year, and he's probably the most ripe to be a bust. And, I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying is if you're looking at the risk of those 5 quarterbacks, he's probably the riskiest.
Absolutely. And the risk is really amplified when you make the trades you made, because they gave up a lot to trade all the way to 3.
A whole lot. So, the things that factored into the Bears being able to get Justin Fields is Atlanta didn't trade out. They stayed at number 4.
Didn't they take the highest tight end ever? Was that the highest a tight end was ever drafted?
In my lifetime, yes. I don't know when Mike Ditko was drafted, but in my lifetime, yeah, no tight end. And listen, Kyle Pitts is really good. I don't know if I can justify taking a tight end that high. But maybe they're like, you know what, this is the last hurrah with our offense. Let's go for it.
Yeah, let's win games 51-49.
Pretty much. Is not a big surprise with the Bengals. Is either going to be Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell. And they opted for the really good wide receiver. And then the Dolphins, I was pretty sure that they weren't going to take a quarterback, but who knows if they were going to trade out of that spot. And they didn't. Taking wide receiver. Detroit probably jumping for joy, getting an elite offensive tackle.
Yeah, that was a great pick for them.
And they were the first of the teams to sort of, have really good talent pushed down because of the quarterback shuffle. Then Carolina, I was on pins and needles sitting there. I'm like, what are they going to do? Because they could very well have drafted a quarterback and then had Sam Darnold as the backup. They didn't pay that much for him. And he's, they could have just taken in the 1 year. And
they just traded Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, you made that space available. You could have not picked up Darnold's 5th-year option and just paid him for the 1 year and had him be the starter for the year and then use him as a bridge quarterback. Could have very well have done that. And they chose not to. They chose J.C. Horn, who is a good corner, is a very good corner. Played very well for the Bears. And then at 9, I'm sitting there going, all right, Justin Fields right here, Justin Fields. And they come out and they go, Patrick Surtain. And I'm like, what? And at that point, I'm starting to do some calculus, and I'm like in my head, I'm looking like Rain Man. I'm sitting here doing some math, and I'm like, can the Bears get one of the next 2 quarterbacks?
You're drawing permanent marker on the wall. Your wife comes in and yells at you as you stand on the couch, take the painting off the wall, and just start crunching a bunch of numbers on the wall.
I've got string pointing at all, tying things together. So, at that point, it's, I'm like, all right, well, what's going to happen here? And you're like, the Bears trade up, and holy shit, it's happening. You knew that. I was pretty sure the Eagles were not going to take a quarterback. I know there was a possibility, but I'm like, they've got so many problems. I think they're just going to try to build around that quarterback they have. And
yeah, I think they're pretty hell-bent on making Jalen Hurts a thing.
Yeah, and he's not going to be a thing. And so I was like, I'm fairly certain they're not, but, here we go. And I'm like, at that point, I'm like, what's Dallas going to do? What's, what are the Giants going to do? I'm like, Giants, I don't think are picking quarterback. Dallas is definitely not. Chargers definitely not. Jets in their next pick. I'm like, all these going through these, and I'm like, the Patriots definitely will. So, and then the Bears trade up, and we get Justin Fields. And when they're trading, I'm like, all right, who's going to be Mac Jones? And I think the whole Bears fandom is like, are they going to pick Mac Jones and screw this up?
That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying the whole time. And again, I want to reiterate the fact that I am not very low or down on Mac Jones. I just don't think he's the right guy for the Bears or the right guy to take at that spot. I think Mac Jones going to New England is a much better fit than here. But I mean, again, with all that being said, I was praying. I'm like, please be Justin Fields. Please be Justin Fields. Please be Justin Fields. And then
Justin Fields.
It was.
And there we go. And it's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a Cowboys fan, and back in the day, we used to drive up to New York together and go to the NFL draft. And I'm telling him, I was like, before the draft, I was like, I worry the Bears are going to trade up because Ryan Pace is pretty much all he does is trade up. And I'm reading through all of his draft day trades, and it's trade up, trade up, trade up, trade up, trade up. And I was like, the well is running dry, and it's not sustainable. You end up having to supplement everything with free agency when you don't have a lot of draft picks. And so my first reaction, as soon as they made the pick and I saw what it was, before they made the decision or the announcement, I'm like, man, they're giving up next year's number 1 and a 4th and a 5th rounder to move up 9 spots. And I'm like, damn it, Ryan Pace got fleeced again. He got fleeced again. And then they were like, Justin Fields. And I'm like, what's funny is I've watched a lot of quarterback tape, but I only watched basically everybody that I was not expecting to be a first round, because I was like, well, they're not going to get a first round quarterback. They're going to be gone by 20. And I didn't think the Bears had the ammunition to move up. And so I didn't watch a lot of Justin Fields tape. I've only seen some highlights, and highlights are nice and all, but they don't tell you the whole stories, because every college player has highlight reels. Otherwise, they would not be playing college football. And so I went and I watched the tape, and I was like, oh, man. Mike, it does suck to give up next year's first rounder, especially when it's probably going to be somewhere between 7 and 15. But we got a quarterback. We've got our franchise quarterback for the next 15 years.
And Sean, I did something kind of similar where I didn't watch enough of Justin Fields. I didn't watch a lot of OSU football. And, I admittedly on this show was nervous and questioned Justin Fields. Foolishly, I did that because the main game I watched of him last year was his one really bad start against Northwestern. You remember that game.
I did. And I went and I watched that whole entire game. Every single snap of that game I watched twice.
Brutal.
It was not a good game. But here's, I'm going to get to in a second, is he was missing some of his weapons. So he was throwing to receivers that weren't his main guys. There was tons of drops in that game. A lot of drops. The pass rush was getting home, so he was constantly scrambling.
Mm-hmm.
He put that team on his shoulders, and for the most part, he didn't play terribly. It just was a bad day for the offense. The one I'm just going to put right on his chest is he was rolling right, went to throw it out of bounds, and threw it right to a Northwestern defender. And I'm like, oof, that was a brutal one. I'm like, when you're throwing it away, just throw it away. Don't put it through the field of play to get it out of play. Like that one's a damn. You wish you could have that back, but it wasn't a good game. But I can't fault him. It was a bad day for Ohio State's offense. You go back and you watch the rest of the games, and you're like, this is a really good quarterback.
He's accurate. He's athletic. He's good rolling out, and he can run. He can run, man.
He runs a 4.40.
Wasn't that better than Tariq Cohen?
It's the same as it's like the same as basically the same as Tariq Cohen. And I watched a play where his man was running down for a touchdown. The defensive back is chasing him down. Justin Fields ran them both down and blocked the guy so his guy could score a touchdown. I'm like,
dope.
That is, you can't tell me that's a guy who doesn't love football. He ran, I showed it to my wife. I watched it on repeat, that play, like 10 times in a row. My wife's like, what are you watching? I'm like, watch this. This is the Bears' new quarterback. And she's like, ooh, he's fast. I'm like, he chased down both guys and made the block. But you watch him, and he's got just an absolutely strong arm. I mean, is it Patrick Mahomes strong? Probably not, but it's only maybe a half step lower than that. He can make those throws with ease. He doesn't have to put all the oomph into it like a Drew Brees or a Tom Brady does. And I'm not knocking those guys. It just, they didn't have the strongest of arms and they were older. Justin Fields has a cannon. He's super athletic. He's a winner. He's a leader. You just watch that team followed him into battle. He's a true number one quarterback. He's built like Cam Newton. He's a little shorter. He's arguably had the biggest arm in this draft. I watched him lower his shoulder and take out linebackers. He has a solid throwing base. You watched him actually read progression. So I was watching this and I was like, man, I don't know all of Ohio State's playbooks and route trees and things. I'm like, but I'm seeing him, make his progressions. And then after I was done watching film, I watched oh my God, why am I drawing a blank? The guy that played for Arizona in the Greatest Show on Turf quarterback.
Kurt Warner?
Kurt Warner did a breakdown of him, and he's like, I'm not talking a lot of things. He's like, I'm talking about, their reads. He's like, and he showed, he's like, he's pretty good at making these reads, and he's like, on this play, watch when this defensive back does this, his read should be this, and boom, here it is. And I was like, okay, that quantified what I was watching, in a more mathematical way. So you watch it. His pre-snap reads were good. And Matt Nagy told a story about how when they interviewed him, they went through some of the Bears plays. And then on draft night, when they drafted him, he asked him about one of the plays, and he could recall it. He could recall the formation and the routes. And I was like, all right, that's good. I like that.
We've never seen this before in Chicago. Isn't it refreshing?
Yeah. And, I'm not going to say that Justin Fields is a perfect quarterback. Every quarterback coming out has something that you're like, all right, if they don't succeed in the NFL, this is the reason. Mm-hmm. And with Justin Fields, my biggest thing was he's got this weird hitch in his release mechanics that are just slow it down. It's going to allow him to have some batted balls down. It's going to allow some corners to jump routes or catch up. It's just got a little bit of a weird hiccup in his mechanics, and it slows down his release a little bit. There were times when he did stare down a receiver when he knew that was the guy he was going to. He's going to have to at least look guys off. But you look at his numbers, and he's a 4.4 run or 40 guy. His quarterback rating in college was through the roof. He was 20. He only threw 6 interceptions. He had, I think, the highest yards per attempt out of any of the quarterbacks that were drafted in the first round. Completed over 70% of his passes. And you're like, oh, you know, what about versus the good teams? All right, if you pick only against the good programs, the top 25 programs, he still completed 64% of his passes.
I was going to say the numbers against the good teams are good, and that's something that a lot of people have talked about.
Yeah, it was just the numbers against the non-good teams were just flawless. So, I watched that game against Clemson to wash the taste out of the Northwestern game, and you're just like, and that's a game where he had time to prepare for Clemson, and he went through them like hot knife through butter. He was unstoppable. And I like to see that, where when a guy has time to watch film and game plan and you see what he can do, and that's what you got. That's a guy that's preparing.
Yep.
And I think my favorite thing is when the Bears traded up for Mitch Trubisky, you had a whole lot of people that didn't know how to feel.
Yep.
You didn't know what we were getting. You didn't understand. You're like, can you walk me through why is he good? Why did he go second? What makes him better than the other guys? I know that Mel Kiper had and Todd McShay and the draft Knicks had him higher, but like what makes him higher? Nobody really knew. And you had to sort of explain why you did what you did. But
right, exactly.
But with Justin
when you have
Fields,
the second overall pick having so many questions, that makes you nervous right off the bat.
Yeah, but it's just, there's a lot of explaining why. It's like when somebody tells a joke and you're like, well, let me explain to you why it's funny. And then it's just like, okay, I sort of don't get it. Justin Fields passes that eyeball test. You're just like, watch him. Watch the plays. He passes the eyeball test. And the best thing about it is all of Chicago Bears fandom is on board. So we are all going to ride or die on this pick. We are all on board. There's nobody, there's maybe there's a couple of fringe guys here and there, your weird uncle that only shows up to say racist things at Thanksgiving. He might hate the pick, but the 99.9% of Bears fans are on board here. So we are all charging into battle this season behind our guy.
And you know what? This might be, if this pick does work out, if everything works out like we hope, this might be the moment that saved the Chicago Bears from irrelevancy. I have talked about on this show many times how I felt like this city was slowly losing the Bears. That the youth didn't want to watch the Bears. They wanted to watch the superstars. Well, if this works, then one of those big superstars is going to be here in Chicago, and people are going to want to watch that. This could save the Bears. And I understand that maybe saying that it's completely dying is a bit dramatic because, the Bears are always going to have a following here. It's a huge city. But, I mean, you think about just over the past decade or so, just how much the Bears have fallen out with so many people. Well, this could be that Theo Epstein hire moment. This could be that Rocky Wirtz taking over the Blackhawks moment. I truly hope that this is that Thursday at 7:40, whatever local time, was the moment the Chicago Bears franchise turned around. It has to happen. We have to wait and see. But if it does work, that night, that pick, that moment, that will be the moment if this works out.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I ordered a Justin Fields jersey, and I'm gonna put this out there. I've seen Charlie Brown. I know where Lucy just keeps pulling the football away, and Charlie keeps falling on his ass every time. And I got a Justin Fields jersey, And those two things aren't related. Just putting that out there. You know, it's but I got a jersey. I got an orange jersey.
Now I'm nervous because your meatball ass went out and bought one.
No. It's because, listen, I'm going to read my collection of Bears jerseys. I have a Walter Payton. I have a Lance Briggs. I have a Devin Hester. I have a Brian Urlacher. I have a Julius Peppers. And I have a Bronco Nagurski.
How many of those did you buy before they played a single snap in the NFL?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Does it?
It doesn't matter. It's I'm not, for all of my Cub failure jerseys, and I am not going to have a failure as a Bears jersey. It's not going to happen. I don't have a Mitch Trubisky jersey. I don't have a Jay Cutler jersey. I feel really bad for the people that have a Kevin White jersey. I do not have one of those. I am confident.
Well, you know, I'll give you that. You know what I did draft night? I took my old Jordan Howard jersey and I shittily taped a piece of paper that said Fields, put it over the name, and then I took another piece of paper and just drew a big, massive 1 and taped that on as well. Well, you know, I'm going to tell you right now, I think jersey sales in the city of Chicago right now, they got to be pretty one-sided for any athlete.
Yeah, the jersey sales are probably through the roof right now. I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I'm going to say that Justin Fields is going to have the most rookie jerseys sold from draft night till opening of training camp.
Yeah.
Because there's not that many Jacksonville fans. I mean, sure, they're all going to go out and get a Trevor Lawrence jersey, but I think the Jets are hesitant. They've been burned too many times. And then, you know, do you run out and get an offensive tackle jersey? Do you go, you know, most of the Bengals fans, if they ran out and got a jersey, they probably got a Joe Burrow jersey last year. Lions fans know better. You know, you just look down the list, and I think the 49er fans are going to be like, let's wait this out on Trey Lance.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think they're still buying George Kittle jerseys anyway, so.
Yeah, and you can go through a catalog of historical players that you still can buy a jersey for. So
Joe Montana, Steve Young,
yeah, Jerry Rice. You know, you got a lot of players there. So you're like, all right, I'll hold off. But Bears we needed this. We all needed a new jersey, and we're like, we are throwing our support here.
You know, it's amazing just what a complete 180 this team has done for the city and for us on this show, because anyone who's listened to us consistently knows how much venom we've been spitting towards the Chicago Bears. And, you know, at the time it felt very deserved, and I don't think people were really in disagreement with us, but this goes to show what one move for the most important position in the game, and arguably the most important position in all of North American professional sports, can do. I mean, this city is embracing the Bears again. I mean, just this pick alone, people going out and celebrating like crazy. I mean, just this weekend when I was out in public, I saw people wearing Bear stuff. You know, it was getting to a point where I thought I saw more people wearing Packers gear around the suburbs than Bears stuff. And now, I just want this to truly be the awakening we need. And, you know, people could say, well, you know, some of us thought that in 2017. But back to your point, there was a lot of weariness in 2017. There were a lot of people very unsure how to feel. When you have a potential franchise-changing moment and you're trying to talk yourself into it, the chances of failure are much, much higher. And again, this doesn't mean this is going to be a 100% slam dunk going to work, but you are putting yourself in the best possible position to make this work. And, you know, I think too, Sean, what I really want to mention and I think you are going to agree with this, is this situation is different than 2017 for a number of reasons. Number one, and I'm sure you agree with me on this too, there seems to be a more solidified system in place, regardless about how you feel about Nagy. But you look at the staff he has, Bill Lazor, John DeFilippo, you feel better about developing Justin Fields because I think there is an actual vision here where when you drafted Mitch Trubisky, your head coach was old conservative defensive-minded John Fox who wanted Deshaun Watson. So not only was your head coach and GM on different pages, but you were trying to develop him in his first year behind Mike Glennon and a defensive-minded head coach that didn't really let him cut loose. He kind of shackled him a little bit. There is an actual system in place here for Justin Fields. I see a plan. I see a plan, a more thought-out plan than when they had drafted Mitchell Trubisky. Would you say that's accurate?
I would say yes.
Now, the other thing I want to bring up, because we're going to have to talk about this eventually. I want to talk about Andy Dalton for a sec. And I know Bears fans don't want to hear about Andy Dalton, but I think we do have to talk about it. It's very tempting to compare Andy Dalton to Mike Glennon. It's very tempting to call Andy Dalton a loser in this draft. I don't think either of those are the case. You cannot, in my opinion, compare the Mike Glennon situation to the Andy Dalton situation. Andy Dalton came in as a stopgap on a one-year deal. He knew what he was getting into. He did not come here thinking he was going to be the guy moving forward. When they brought in Mike Glennon, yes, 1 year was guaranteed, but overall it was a multi-year deal basically saying, look, we're going to let you try to be the guy, and if you can prove you could be the guy, you're going to be the guy. And then they invited him to the draft party and drafted Mitchell Trubisky. But Andy Dalton was always going to be a stopgap, and I think Andy Dalton understood that coming in.
I mean, I think there's a couple things. One, you're right, is a 30-something-year-old quarterback that was cut by his original team, was signed to be a backup, and then on a one-year deal, didn't get re-signed by that team. It's on his third team in 3 years, signed a one-year deal on a team that everybody and their mother knew was going to get a quarterback. He's not stupid. He might be disappointed. He might have hoped to parlay this into a couple-year gig. And who knows? Maybe he re-signs as a backup.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Maybe he plays really well and he gets the opportunity to start on another team next year. You know, you look, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Andy Dalton could be the next, what's his name? Fitzmagic, where he signs for this team for a year or two, then goes to that team for a year or two, and he's just that guy. He's the bridge guy. He'll come in, win you a few games, bridge you, and that could be. I mean, Fitzmagic has made a whole lot of money being that guy.
Yes, he has.
So you had to know, if you're Andy Dalton, that the Bears are going to pick a quarterback. I think he was shocked that it was that high. And I think, to be honest with you, the Bears were a little shocked that Justin Fields fell too. I mean, I'm sure that they war gamed that he, what if he falls? What do we do? But I don't think they expected that to happen. I don't think anybody expected that to happen. And, I think the Bears were fully ready to try to go with a Kyle Trask or a Kellen Mond, and Andy Dalton then at that point might be a 2-year stopgap. But I don't think anybody was forecasting being able to get Justin Fields.
No, I don't either. But, with that said, I still think that when you sign on a 1-year deal, you got to know you're a stopgap.
Oh yeah,
regardless.
Andy Dalton has to know that. I think he was just shocked that it was crap. It's happening a lot sooner than I was expecting. I think he legit thought.
I mean,
I think he legit thought he had the whole year in his pocket because, barring injury, Kyle Trask or Calamond are probably not ready to play.
And there is validity to that. I can't disagree with you.
So that's, I'm not, an Andy Dalton hater. He's done nothing to make me hate him. I didn't like the move to bring him in at that price point. But, I see the position the Bears were in. They were like, you know what? We need somebody that could be a starter because we legit do not have one. We don't feel, Trubisky is gone. We clearly know it's not Nick Foles.
Mm-hmm.
We need somebody in here. I am sure they negotiated with themselves and overpaid for him. But if Justin Fields end up going in the top 10, you don't have the ammunition to go up that far unless you sell the farm. And so a couple of moves and bam, it's you're expecting Andy Dalton to have to be your starter, and now you're like, oh, well, now how long is he going to be our starter?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the question that we're all asking here, because to me, it seems like the plan is still Andy Dalton is going to start week 1, the old-fashioned sit behind the veteran quarterback. Now, I don't think we can 100% say that. We'll see what happens in camp and preseason and all that good stuff, but it would not surprise me regardless if they said, you know what, week 1, we're going to stick with our veteran Andy Dalton, and that's that. And I know a lot of us don't necessarily want that. I mean, I want to watch Justin Fields as soon as possible, but if they believe that this is the right move to still start with Andy Dalton week 1, do I fully trust them with football decisions? No, not really. But, if they have a more solidified system and better knowledge of how to develop this quarterback as opposed to the last one, then I can live with it. I can. Do I see Andy Dalton starting all 16 games? No, I don't. I think Justin Fields is going to get in there eventually. But in terms of just
I think it's after
week
the bye.
1 start.
I think after the bye.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And again, it might also depend on how Andy Dalton does. But regardless, I do feel that week 1, as of right now, my bet is still Andy Dalton being the starter.
And I was going to say this before today's news, that I would imagine that they want to see what the offensive line is going to look like and test the waters with Andy Dalton before they put in Justin Fields. They don't want to get him murdered if that line's going to be bad.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's also important too, is if you test the waters and it looks good, then you have maybe more of a safety cushion to say, all right, let's bring in the kid. Let's see what he can do. Because, look, I've seen the arguments for we don't need to see Andy Dalton. If this kid really is who he is, then let him play, let him get in the NFL. And I understand that argument, too. I'm not necessarily going to say that's wrong or I fully disagree, but I don't dislike the idea of starting the season with Andy Dalton. And I also understand saying, every season is precious. You need to try to contend. Is Andy Dalton starting week 1 really going to be what we need to do to win? But with such a high ceiling prospect like Justin Fields, I think the thing that has to come first is developing him right, because he's going to be the guy. If he is your franchise quarterback, the plan is to have him there for many, many years to come. And you want to make sure that those many years to come are going to be utilized to the fullest. So I'm not saying I want Andy Dalton to be in there because I want to watch Andy Dalton. I'm saying that if they do start Andy Dalton for reasons that can justify the development of Fields, okay. If they end up saying, you know what, Fields should be developing by starting right away, then so be it. I'm not going to argue that.
And then round 2, the Bears traded up again. They gave up the 52, the 83, and the 204th pick Oh, one more thing is, I don't know if you saw the video. There was a video in the war room for the Denver Broncos, and you could hear one half of the conversation, one side of the conversation from the Broncos GM, where he's talking to different other GMs. And clearly at one point he's talking to Ryan Pace. And you can't hear the full thing. They cut back and forth between conversations, but you hear him say, did you see this video?
No, I didn't.
You hear him say, well, I'd want this year's and next year's first, second, and third. I think he was trying to get that from Ryan Pace to move up to 9.
Oh, I did hear the story about that. I didn't hear the audio, but I did hear that story. Yes.
There's a video and audio. It's clear. He's talking to somebody and he wants this year and next year's first, second, and third. Like, man, I'm glad Ryan Pace stuck to his guns and got him a lot cheaper, and
yeah,
they paid a lot for him, but it's comparable to what the Chiefs gave up for Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's a haul, but it's not like I don't think it's as ridiculous as maybe one may think. If Justin Fields turns out, nobody's going to give a shit. Absolutely nobody is going to give a shit. But, the nice thing about it was we still kept our second-round picks this year. I mean, that's kind of nice. So, and you didn't give up multiple years of first-round picks. You gave up next year's. But it wasn't like Khalil Mack where you didn't have a first-round pick for several years.
Yeah, I mean, they paid a premium, but they kept most of their premium picks for this year, which I think was important. So then you're sitting in the second round, and they trade up again. They trade the 52, 83, 204 for the 39 and the 151. And they go up and take Tevin Jenkins, the offensive tackle, out of Oklahoma State. Now, he's a guy that I saw a lot of mocks, him going in the first round of the Bears.
That was a very big talking point about that pick, is that he was, by many people, evaluated as a first-round talent.
And, I mean, I think he is. You watch him, and I listened to what his college coach said, and he said, like, within 2 years, he's going to be easily the best offensive lineman out of this draft and one of the best offensive linemen in football. That's, you like hearing that. And this guy is mean. It's funny, you look at him and he looks like he should be on the Bad News Bears, like the dorky little kid. You just look at his face. Clearly you don't look at his body.
Oh, yeah.
He's 6'5", 317, but you just look at his face with his glasses and he looks like, a nerd. But he's mean, he's nasty, he's strong, athletic, and you heard his, I don't know if you heard his quotes, but basically he just wants to rip everybody's face off, and God help you if you hit his quarterback, because he's going after you.
Very nice. Very, very nice. And you know what? I think a lot of Bears fans, including myself, said, okay, we got our quarterback. Now let's protect him. That was the first priority. And that's what they got. And with today's moves, cutting Charles Leno, he's going to be right in there, slated right in there for when the season starts next year. So they're clearly high enough to say, you're ready to be a starter in the NFL. So go get it.
Yeah, we'll get to Charles Leno. I kind of want to go through the draft picks. We could talk about it, but I'm a little surprised. But the Bears feel he could be a left tackle. I thought he was a prototypical right tackle. I mean, he did play some left tackle in college, but this is a guy who hasn't given up a sack in 2 years. In 2 years, he's only given up 11 pressures. The Bears clearly had a round 1 grade on him, so they traded up. He's a guy, for as big as he is athletic. He easily moves into the second level. The big knock on him, he's got short arms. And, I can't quantify it, but if you look, there's only been one one Pro Bowl offensive tackle with arms as short as his in like the last 10 years. And that's Jason Peters. He's really freaking good. But that's the knock on him. You know, he might struggle a little bit with speed, guys, but other than that, it's just the short arms. That's the only knock on him. I watched the film. I thought he's a right tackle all along. I mean, a really good right tackle, but I thought he was a right tackle. So we're going to see what happens here. Then
you know who else had really short arms? The T-Rex.
It's true, but you also don't see them being the Pro Bowl.
No, but they ate a bunch of things.
So then the Bears don't have another pick until 151, which is a 5th round. And they go back-to-back offensive tackles. They got Larry Barome from Mizzou. 6'5", 322. He's like a guard tackle. This is another guy that he's a mauler. He's really tough, really strong. He's not that athletic. He's got some inconsistent feet. He's not the best pass blocker, but as a run blocker, he is a mauler. The one thing you got to watch for him is his weight. So he can really balloon up. So you got to keep his weight down. But I like him. I think he's going to be, you know, a solid player that you got in the 5th round.
Yeah.
Then with your 6th round pick, I was at first a little confused. They took running back Khalil Herbert from Virginia Tech, 5'9", 210. He runs a 4.46, which is funny. I'm watching the film on him, and he doesn't look fast. I think it's because he's got little legs. He doesn't look like he's going fast, but you're like, well, nobody's catching him. He's got to be pretty fast. They look deceptively fast. And I look at his 40 time, it's 4.46. He reminds me a lot of Mike Davis. He's a cut and go guy, really good character guy. I like that. He won awards for his character, good character guy. He's got a really nice, easy running style. He's patient. He's got good speed in the hole. Like, he can accelerate in the hole. He recognizes the running lanes, deceptive speed, just not much in the pass catching department. Needs to get stronger too. But what I liked about him is he's got return experience. So I think that was a big key for the Bears because they let Cordero Patterson go. So you're in a position where you gotta have returners. You don't want to be like you were before Cordero Patterson. So they have a returner, a guy with return experience, which is good.
Yeah, you know, at first I was a little confused too when they took a running back. I'm like, is that really one of our greatest needs? But to the point you just said, I read about him and they talked about his abilities as a special teamer. I'm like, oh, well, they do need one of those. So, you know, if you can make him into primarily a special teams guy, even if just that, I think you'll take it. It is a need.
I just, between the free agent running back signing and the draftee, if Ryan Nall ever gets another carry for the Chicago Bears, I'm going to lose my mind.
Maybe they'll bring back Taquan Mizell.
So then the Bears use one of their other 6th-round picks, and you know, it's funny, after the Tevin Jenkins pick, I'm like, they need a corner and they need a wide receiver, and I'm like, I'm not going to be surprised if they pick a offensive lineman, and they went another offensive lineman. And just sort of predicting Ryan Pace. They go with the next 6th-round pick, Daz Newsome, wide receiver out of North Carolina, 5'10", 190. He's kind of a gadget guy. He gets to his top speed really quick. He's got punt return ability, which is, I think, part of the reason that they got him. He's not a really great route runner. He's not a really great pass catcher because he's a body catcher. So he's not going to be a hands catcher. You're not going to go up and throw a lot of 50-50 balls and have him go up and get those. And he also got overshadowed by Diami Brown, who was another wide receiver on that team. So I'm not that particularly high on Daz Newsome, but he's a guy that was a good punt returner that you got late in the 6th round. You know, at that point you're sort of looking for special teamers, and I think you got that guy. So he's kind of what you're drafting him for.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I didn't really know much about him, to be honest with you.
I was really hoping for Jaylon Darden, who ended up going to Tampa Bay. That is a guy that's just like a home run threat. I think he has star potential. He's little, but he's like if Tariq Cohen was a wide receiver. You get that guy in some space and get him, and he could just turn it into touchdowns. And I really hope the Bears would get him, but he went sooner than I expected. So others saw the need for him. But the next pick the Bears had, 228 in the 6th round. They got Thomas Graham Jr., the cornerback out of Oregon, 5'11", 193. He's a ball hawk, and he's physical. He's got decent size, good build. He's got a knack for big plays. He's always coming up with big plays and pass breakups. I really like that. But he's got tight hips. He doesn't have high-end speed, so if he bites on a double move, he's burned. He's going to need help over the top. He's got a little bit of an awkward backpedal, watching him backpedal in games, but he's a gamer. He's a guy that can play special teams right away. He talked about it in an interview about how that's how he got to start. So he's a guy that, you feel like once he gets the game speed understood, he might be, a playmaking guy as a starter or a nickel. But in the meantime, he's a special teamer. And then their last draft pick was Kirus Tonga, defensive tackle out of BYU. He's 6'2", 325 pounds. This guy is an A-gap run stopper, space eater. He's an active tackler. He's stupid strong. He's got, he's a dominant big man. He's got to work on his pad level a little bit. But you watch, it was weird. I'm watching him in some games and he's just dominating. I'm like, how is this guy a 7th rounder? Like at the end of the 7th round, like how the heck is he this? And then I watched versus San Diego State, and he just got manhandled by their center, who was a big guy. I'm like, all right, that kind of knocked him in my eyes. He's somebody that has potential. I think he's got to get some. I think being with Akeem Hicks is going to be good for him, but he is a run stopper. And then the Bears picked up a ton of undrafted rookies. I'm going to quickly go through those. I was up till like 3 a.m. last night watching game film of these guys. That's how much I love you guys. I was watching film on the Bears undrafted rookies. The big prize was Charles Snowden. He's an edge rusher out of Virginia, 6'6", 243. He's a former basketball player. He was projected as like a 4th round guy, and he didn't get drafted, and I don't know why. He's got good skills and production. He needs to get a little bigger and stronger, but I think he's got a lot of potential, and for not having to waste a draft pick on him, that's huge.
Yeah, you'll take that.
Thomas Shaffer, defensive lineman out of Stanford, 6'7", 302. He's from Lake Forest, so he went to Lake Forest High School, and then went.
It's that local kid.
He's a local kid. Tom Shaffer. He's Austrian. He's the Austrian death machine. Went to Stanford, now back with the Bears. He's a high motor, try hard guy, so the Bear fans are gonna love him. I think honestly he's got a possibility of making the roster if he's healthy. He's coming off a knee surgery, so if he's healthy, I think he's got a chance. It's just a big if on the surgery. Sam Kamara, defensive tackle out of Stony Brook. I don't even know where Stony Brook is, but I watch game film.
I've never even heard of it.
And then 6'1", 275. He is fast. He's quick off the snap, but he's a little undersized. It's 6'1", 275 for a defensive tackle. He's going to be a 3 technique kind of guy. But he's a guy that I think has potential if you can, with his quickness. He might have to get a little stronger because he's playing lower competition, but I think he's got potential. Then there's Caleb Johnson, linebacker out of Houston Baptist. I can guess where that is, but I've never heard of that school. From my understanding, I think this is their inaugural football program. So Caleb Johnson is 6'1", 215. He's a special teamer. He's a good tackler, instinctive, big hitter, but I think he's a can't body or a special teamer. I don't really see him making the cut. There's Gunnar Vogel, offensive tackle out of Northwestern, 6'6", 312. He's versatile. He played center, right guard, right tackle. He's a big, strong Ophi guy, very stiff, not athletic. I think he's a camp body. There's Gage Cervenka, offensive lineman from Clemson, 6'3", 330. This guy is a monster. Bench pressed 225 pounds 45 times. So he's a strong dude. He was projected as a middle round pick, like 5th round. He plays guard and center. He is tough as a nails. He fits in what the Bears are trying to do with Tevin Jenkins and Larry Barome. He's got a big chip on his shoulder because he wasn't invited to the combine, even though he played on the national championship Clemson team. And now he's pissed that he didn't get drafted. Clemson's coach said that it's a travesty this guy wasn't drafted. And I went through on some of the Clemson fan message boards, and Clemson fans are pissed. They don't understand why he wasn't drafted, and they're excited to see him play for the Bears. I really think this guy could make the team. If not, he'll be a practice squad guy. I don't think they let him go. He's a guy that has what you're looking for based on who they drafted. CJ Marable, Coastal Carolina running back, 5'9", 190. Really great vision, patience. Really tiny frame, though, but he is a pass catcher. Nice speed, playmaker, elusive. He reminds me a lot of Tariq Cohen. Not as many highlights, but that same where, you can line him up in the slot. You can line him up on the outside as a receiver. He runs good routes. So he's an interesting one. Darion Parker, guard out of Mississippi State, 6'3", 355. He plays both left and right guard. He's slow, not athletic, but really strong. He's a camp body. My favorite name of anybody that they got, Daniel Archibong, defensive tackle out of Temple, 6'5", 300 pounds. He's a run stopper, really slow off the ball, but a big, tough guy. I think he's a camp body, unfortunately, but I like Archibong's name.
Archibong.
Here's another good name, Scooter Harrington, tight end out of Stanford, 6'5", 250. He ran a 5'2", 40.
What is it with professional athletes these days being named Scooter? I'm not dissing it. It's just random.
Yeah, I don't know, but he runs a slow 40. I run a 5'2", I think. But I think he was drafted or signed because of the history of good tight ends out of Stanford. I think if he makes it, he'll be the seventh Stanford tight end that's currently in the league. So I think he's a camp body. I don't think he makes it. And then the last two, Khalil McClain, wide receiver out of Troy, 6'3", 217, ran a 4.7 40. Good hands. He's a converted quarterback, really raw. But there's some, you watch him and you're like, I see something there. And you just wonder if the Bears can get it out of him. And then the last one is Deonte Ruffin, cornerback out of Western Kentucky, 5'11", 184, ran a 4.5 40. He's fairly tall for a cornerback, almost 6 feet. Very consistent, showed well in the combine. He was a 4-year player, a good special teamer. He might make this squad. He really might. So that's the end of the list of their unsigned or free agent rookies as of the time we started recording. So now we get to the news today, which I'm not really terribly surprised by, is that they cut Charles Leno.
Yeah, again, they're putting faith in the new young kids, and I look, Charles Leno had his moments, but there were a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of bad penalties, and he seems like a very classy guy. I wish him the best. I hope that, he could find a job somewhere else, and I think he will, and he'll be able to, continue some decent play, but I'm not really surprised, nor am I sitting here saying, man, I'm super upset we cut Charles Leno. I felt like it was, okay, going to save some money, going to put some faith in the new kids. I'm cool with that. Let's do it. So, yeah, I wish Charles Leno the best, and that's all I really got to say about that.
He's a success story. I'm not going to lie. He was a 7th-round draft pick.
Yeah, give him credit.
He bought an air mattress from Walmart and was living on Kyle Long's floor because he didn't think that he would make it to the team. And not only did he make it, he became the starting left tackle for the last 7 years, got paid a lot of money. And, was he terrible? No. He was average. I mean, at his best season, he was slightly above average offensive left tackle. But
yeah, he played well in 2018 when they won the division.
But since then, he's been average or just below average. So he's not terrible, but he's not good. And I think the problem is if you look at the offensive linemen that they drafted and the traits of the ones that they signed as undrafted rookies, and they looked at guys with mean, nasty attitudes that are you expect to be defensive linemen with those attitudes, and they're going after you. And Charles Leno was not that guy. He just wasn't that guy. So I think that's part of it is he's a success story for the Bears. They needed to improve, and they needed the money. I think more than anything, this was a cap maneuver. Saves them $9 million. I still don't quite understand. It seemed like the lowest hanging fruit would have been the tight end, Jimmy Graham. I think that would have been the easy low hanging fruit to save yourself $7 million. But they're going to post June 1st cut Charles Leno, and they're going to save $9 million. And that's how they're going to sign these draft picks, because they wouldn't have enough money to sign them. So you probably won't see these guys to sign until June.
Yeah.
But now it goes to that Tevin Jenkins is probably slotted to be your starting left tackle. And I think, he's really good. It's just, that's a lot to ask. And if he's not able to do it right off the bat, because that's a big ask, it's a tough position to play.
It is.
And you're asking a lot from him. You don't have a safety net. That's my concern is there's no safety net on this team. So you're looking at Tevin Jenkins is your probably your starting left tackle. And then on the other side, on the right tackle side, who are really your options over there? You're looking at Jermaine Affetti, who I'm not terribly sold on. Alex Bars, a 5th-round rookie in Larry Barome, Arlington Hambright, Lachavia Simmons, Elijah Wilkinson. That's who your other options are. So, honestly, if I'm the Bears, I probably try to sign another veteran tackle that has left tackle experience. because there's a couple of names that are out there that are still there in May that haven't signed yet. And it's Alejandro Villanueva, who was the starting left tackle for the last several years for Pittsburgh. Mitchell Schwartz, who's a right tackle, but he's a good veteran. Eric Fisher, who is coming off of injury, but he's supposed to be back around sometime around training camp. But he was the starting tackle for the Chiefs the last couple of years, for a long time. He's good, very good. He left tackle. And then there's one name I know I'm going to get probably dragged about, and I'm going to explain it because he's a veteran that literally just went on TV and said that he's got something left in the tank and he wants to play this year and prove that he's better than he was last year. He's the other guy that has as short of arms as Tevin Jenkins at tackle, Jason Peters. I think he could be had for cheap. He's won Super Bowl at left tackle recently. And I think he's a guy that you could put him in there and he competes. And if he can't win that left tackle spot, he probably wins the right tackle spot. And you got two mean sons of bitches bookending your quarterback. And I like that. So
Fair enough.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if you see the Bears bring in a veteran, because I think that's a tough spot to put your team in, where you're putting a right tackle at left tackle, a rookie right tackle at left tackle, and then you're putting possibly a rookie at right tackle as well.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I mean, having a safety net there would be really, really nice and ideal. I mean, we've seen time and time again that depth is never a bad thing to have. So I'm on board with you on that. I won't criticize your opinion or demean it or disagree.
Yeah. So, I mean, all in all, I think the Bears did a lot of things to improve. I still think there's a lot of room for improvement. This is not going to be a good team by any stretch, but if Aaron Rodgers sticks to his guns and never plays for the Packers again, it does change the entire dynamic of the division.
Do you really believe that Aaron Rodgers is out of Green Bay? I want your brief opinion on this.
I think they'll do something to placate him. I don't see him leaving. I mean, I think the first they're going to offer him money, then they're going to tell him that he can have say in final roster cuts for the offense. And I think third option is they potentially fire the general manager. I think they'll do all those things before they trade him.
I'm kind of with you there. It's just really hard for me to imagine them just all out just getting rid of him. Though I mean, in years past, we've heard all this Aaron Rodgers is unhappy. I mean, we hear it almost every year, but I do feel like this year, unlike years past, this sounds a lot more serious. I mean, there is a lot more smoke with these rumors. There are. But even so, it's almost like settling in court. I almost feel like they're going to, quote unquote, settle in court, if you know what I mean. Basically what you just said. I'm not saying I 100% say he's staying or he's leaving. I'll truly believe he's leaving when I see it.
And, there's all these people that are like, oh, he's going to be back. He can't just retire because he'll owe like $20 million in,
it's like $23 million.
$23 million or whatever in roster bonus. I mean, in salary, signing bonus that he's going to have to pay. And I'm like, number one, I don't think the Packers are going to go after it because that's bad form. to go, the greatest player that we've ever had on our team, arguably, a surefire Hall of Famer, and we're going to go, you got to pay us back the signing bonus. You know how bad that looks for the franchise?
And Aaron Rodgers will pay it in pennies.
I mean, Aaron Rodgers has earned $241 million in his career so far.
And that doesn't count all the commercials and the TV stuff and all the other stuff he's done.
Or his Jeopardy money.
Or his Jeopardy money.
It's just his football salary, $241 million. If he has to pay $23 million, sure, he's not going to like it. He will. But I just think it's bad form. I mean, I just think there's trouble brewing.
Yeah, there's something going on. There is absolutely something going on. This isn't just rumors. This isn't just fluff. There is clearly something up.
Adam Schefter has reported it multiple times. There's truth there.
Yeah.
But if Aaron Rodgers...
And while Ian Rappaport initially kind of downplayed it, he's like, well, there is this, and this.
Yeah, and if Aaron Rodgers either retires or is traded, suddenly the whole dynamic of this division changes. You feel like you're better than the Lions. I mean, the Lions are rebuilding. I just don't think they're going to be very good this year. So you feel like you're better than the Lions. You're not that far behind the Vikings. I know they're going to be better defensively because they had a lot of guys opt out last year. But you were also a dog turd team with dog turd quarterbacks playing. And no matter what you think about Andy Dalton, he's better than Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles were last year. And if not, you got Justin Fields. So you feel like the Bears are in the same ballpark as the Vikings. Like you feel like you could beat them at least. Where you just feel like you can't beat the Packers. And then without Aaron Rodgers, you got to feel like you could beat the Packers.
You would hope. Unless, Jordan Love turns into the next Aaron Rodgers.
I'd be so pissed.
It's going to happen. You know that, right?
No, I feel like they got to pay the piper at some point.
I do, but they won't. I wish they'd pay the damn piper already.
Like,
I've been waiting for them to pay the damn piper my whole life.
Like, I feel like they need to go on a 20-year bad quarterback run where now they'll have the tables will be turned and be like, yeah, since the Bears drafted Justin Fields, look at all of these quarterbacks that Green Bay's churned through. Jordan Love.
When did Bart Starr retire?
I don't know. Before I was born?
So there was a pretty sizable gap between Starr and Favre.
Yes. But there was Don Majkowski before that, who was pretty good.
Well, then say hello to Jordan Love, Pro Bowler, Hall of Famer.
Yeah, here. Green Bay Packers. Bart Starr, 1956 through 1971. Don Majkowski was their starter from 87 to 92. So he was their starter for a long time. And then he got injured, and then Brett Favre came, and it was 92 to 2007. Then Aaron Rodgers, 2008 to present.
Jordan Love, whenever to whenever, Hall of Famer.
You know what, though? Is
Super Bowl champion.
Is Packer fans were like, Brett Hundley is going to be our next Pro Bowl quarterback. I'm like, Brett Hundley is terrible.
Which Packers fans were you listening to?
I was at the draft and listening to him. Brett Hundley, yeah, he's going to be so good. No, he's not. He's terrible. So, yeah, I want to go back to...
That was their paying of the piper. They paid the piper through like 5 games.
Yeah, so I want to go back to the days where they had Lynn Dickey and Jim Zorn. Randy Wright.
Don't we all?
And
They I agree. They've definitely had enough Hall of Fame quarterbacking for a while.
yeah, they're just too much. So now they need to pay. All right, should we talk some other sports here quickly?
Yeah, I do want to spit some fire towards a certain baseball team on the north side, but I feel like there is some news we have to talk about first.
Yeah, Luis Robert got hurt, and the news came out today that is not good.
No, it's not. Grade 3 strain, which is a complete tear, according to what they say. I'm not a doctor. I'm just telling you what they're saying. And they said, a minimum of 12 to 16 weeks of no baseball activity?
Yeah, so it'll be like 4 months before he can start resuming baseball activity.
That is a devastating blow.
That is bad. And, that's tough because, I mean, it sucks because you got, a young, really good baseball player and you lose him for months. That's bad. And then what's going to happen is old man LaRussa is going to try to play shitty players to fill their spots because that's what he does.
He sure loves Jake Lamb, Billy Hamilton,
And Larry Garcia.
Who, by the way, shout out to my friend Brad. His favorite player ever is Luis Garcia, and I'm being 100% sarcastic on that. So, Brad, if you ever listen to this, I'm sharing your love for Luis Garcia.
Yeah, so it's he just keeps playing these guys and Nick Williams until the general manager was like, no more of this Nick Williams bullshit, and we shipped him out. Like, at least we got Lamb and Hamilton and Luis Garcia, and you're like, well, crap. Like, what else do we have at this point? We still have massive injuries. Now, this is another shining example of maybe if the White Sox would have opened up their pocketbooks and signed another outfielder like we all were screaming about during the offseason, this wouldn't have hurt so bad, but it does.
Well, look, I mean, it's hard for any team to lose 2 of their superstars. I mean, that's just incredibly shitty luck. But, I do agree. I think they could have addressed their depth better, and they could have gotten a more solidified DH. And I don't understand why Tony La Russa doesn't seem to like to play Andrew Vaughn as much as he should be playing. If you're going to entrust a kid that has such little experience at the professional level, then why not give him experience if he's going to be on your squad? Now, I mean, he's gonna have to play these guys he doesn't apparently want to play. Is it really gonna take 2 of your top players getting hurt to do that? I mean, that's the wild thing. And the other big question here is what is Rick Hahn going to do? We know that they're going to kick the tires on outfield help. I mean, they've already established that, and that shouldn't be to anybody's surprise. But what are your options right now? Because teams aren't ready to sell yet. And you ask yourself, if you're a Khan, do we really give up more assets and more future this year? Or are we just going to kind of piece it together and try to coast by and then hopefully they come back? Because, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the biggest concern for Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez is their long-term health. And it's going to be a question of, are we just going to try to go for it no matter what? Or are we kind of prioritize here? There's going to be a lot of questions. And look, if there is good news for the White Sox, I'm going to say this. I feel like they could still kind of coast and be okay. The division sucks.
Yeah, I mean,
it absolutely reeks.
The tough part is that you're stuck in this limbo of, we're a good team. And we just need the help. Like, it's not like we need somebody to carry us, but we need competent players that we could play every day. Or do we waste farm talent to bring in somebody for the year, or do we waste the whole year with, the pitching we have and the hitting we have? It's a tough line to walk, and it sucks that an injury is causing them to do that.
It is, and you look at yourself and you say, okay, if we did have to make a trade, who would be expendable? I don't think they're moving Vaughn. I don't think they're moving Kopech. I don't think they're moving any of their keys like Madrigal or those guys. Do you look at a Dylan Cease maybe? Where you
who else do you fill? I mean, I guess you could put in Kopech into that spot, but Dylan Cease, I think the problem is, I think if you trade him, you're selling low when he's just starting to look really good.
Yeah, I know it's not an easy decision. It's not an easy decision at all. You are in the beginning of a window where you're going to have these guys for quite a while. So I know every season is precious, but I think more is going to be told as time goes on. If you are going on and you say, you know what, these guys look like they can come back, then maybe you do just kind of ride along with it. Again, the division sucks. The Royals aren't going to keep up their play, I don't think. The Twins have gotten off to a horrific start. The Tigers are terrible. The Indians are mediocre at best. This division is still wide open for you guys to take. And if your rotation keeps doing what it's doing, honestly, you could still win that division. I know there's a lot of doom and gloom right now, but I still think the White Sox can easily take that division. Unless the Twins get really hot, and if the Indians pitching can, keep them afloat, outside that, if this was 2 years ago and the Indians were still a top contender and the Twins were slugging it, they'd probably be kind of screwed right now, but they're not. And if you stay afloat and these guys come back, then there you go. You can still make that run you've been hoping for, but we don't know exactly what the timetables are for these guys yet. That's what also makes it difficult. Luis Robert could be back in September, or he might not play again this year. We don't know. It's a very difficult decision to be in.
And I want to talk a little bit about Nick Madrigal. How is that guy so good at making contact? And so many other players in this league are terrible at it.
Well, I mean, that's his focus. He doesn't hit for power. He doesn't walk. I mean, all of his batting focus goes into making contact. Good for him. Not a lot of guys do it these days, like you said.
No, he is like, a lost art form, I mean, he's not particularly good, but the guy just makes contact. And I think that's a very valuable skill to have. A guy that just goes up there and he's probably not going to strike out. His strikeout numbers are so stupid low. But the guy is batting .313 with a .776 OPS.
Old time hitting, man. That's old timey right there. Old time leadoff type.
Like old timey with an E, like timey, timey. But like, I don't know. That's kind of neat. He's not, but like you said, he's not particularly good. He's not a good defender, but man, the guy just makes contact. And I think that's for a roster like the White Sox have. I think that's important. You just keep you keep that. All he does is go up there and then churn an at bat and then get more at bats for your boppers.
And look, even though you don't have Robert and you don't have Eloy, you still have Jose Abreu, and he always gets off to these slow starts, it seems like. Midsummer, he's going to be mashing again. Yasmani Grandal, I think he's going to heat up too. Tim Anderson is still great. Moncada is good. I still think they'll be right in the thick of a playoff race.
Mercedes is still batting over 400 with an 1100 OPS.
Yeah. Well, good for him. I'm not
saying he's going to keep that up. It's just he still has that in May.
A lot of props, man. A lot of props. Mad respect.
Because the thing is he makes solid, hard contact. And good things happen when you make contact and you get good bat speed on it. Good things happen.
And here's another thing too, is I like to think about this. Where do you think the White Sox would be if he wasn't doing what he was doing?
They'd be in trouble.
Yeah. They wouldn't have the record they have now.
Let's see, what else? Lucas Giolito, struggling. Guy's got almost a 6 ERA right now. Like I said, I think he was the guy that was I think he was the one that was going to hurt the most by losing the catcher in free agency.
I mean, there could be something to that. I still think he'll be okay. You look at some of his recent starts and you say, they were solid. They weren't terrific. They were solid. I mean, one of the big things that happened to his stats was that awful game in Boston. But, I'm not too worried about him yet. If this continues, then maybe I will be. But as of right now, I'm not ready to fully panic on him yet. But, there still could be something to the James McCann thing. And I think more time will tell on that. So, I mean,
the thing is you brought in Yasmani Grandal, and he's a terrible catcher. But he can hit the ball. It's what he's paid for. He's paid for hitting the ball.
Well, his framing is supposed to be elite.
Is it? No.
I mean, statistically, for many years it was. He was known for being an elite framer. And, people have talked about his defense, but with him, it's either, he makes a nice play or he just lets the ball go right by him. It's weird.
But that's the thing. And it sucks because you really couldn't afford to pay McCann. I mean, I guess you could have, but, you're holding him back. But, man, when you have a guy that puts up Cy Young numbers with a personal catcher, you hate to break up that combo. I mean, you saw David Ross made a career of being a personal catcher.
Yeah, look at Ross and Lester.
I think that's an extreme version of it, but you have a guy that you're comfortable with and you work well with, and Giolito just hasn't found that this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's still been times he's looked legit dominant, though. Like, that's why I'm not too worried about it.
I'm not worried. He's just not the same guy. Like I said, he's got a 5.68 ERA right now. It's not a good ERA. But on the opposite end of that,
oh my,
Carlos Rodon has a 0.72 ERA in May.
Yeah, and it's not fluky either. It legit looks great.
He looks so good. I'm excited for the guy. He's about to earn a paycheck after this.
Isn't he a Scott Boras client?
I don't know. He might be.
Because if he is, then cha-ching.
Yeah, so you hope he keeps that up, and it's crazy between the 4 and 5 pitchers in this rotation have just really buoyed the team between Cease and Rodon. They've got so much more starting pitching than they did last year. You get the bullpen kinks worked out, and you get some health in there, maybe trade for another bat. And I think this team still wins the division pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm not a Sox fan and I have a different perspective, but I still think that in terms of making the playoffs, they'll be fine. I'm more concerned about the long-term health of their key guys who are hurt. Again, if this was a few years ago and the NL Central or the AL Central was a lot better and you didn't have the starting pitching that you had, yeah, I'd be a bit more worried. But, if this starting pitching can keep it up, then, you're able to just win games. And I will say this, though, the bullpen does have to be better. It just flat does have to be better.
Yeah. And, you're a game and a half behind Kansas City. Kansas City, not that good. I think come come trade deadline, I think they're going to be running away with this division.
I think so too. Even with all of this, the Indians aren't that good. They got some good pitching, but that's about it.
But the north side.
Oh boy, I'm gonna have to go on a rant. I'll let you say anything you want first, and then I'll proceed.
So, since we there was the last show, they played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. Let's see, 1 game with 6 hits, 1 hit, 5 hits. They've looked terrible. This is a team that strikes out way too much. Your pitching's been shitty. Your number one pitcher has over a 7.5 ERA. You traded a Cy Young pitcher for hot doo-doo sandwiches. And now you're dealing with Zach Davies as your number 2. And the only thing that you have going for you is Albert Alzolay had a good start this week. Other than that, it's sandwiches.
All right, you ready for me to go off?
Yes, go.
You mentioned the offense, and I get it. They've looked very bad many moments this year. That's not what's making me angry. Not at all. What's making me angry is me picturing Tom Ricketts and Jed Hoyer sitting in a room saying that this starting rotation is acceptable. You have a slew of has-beens, reclamation projects, and soft tossers. And you thought this was going to be good? You really, honest to God, thought that this rotation was going to be something. Listen, I accepted the fact that this rotation was not going to be great. But what really set me off was Sunday's game. You do not score 12 runs and lose. There is no, but it was a good game. There is zero pride in scoring 12 runs and losing that fucking game. And on top of that, the man you let go who wanted to be here murdered you. And I hope they're proud. I hope they're proud. I have nothing personal against these guys in the rotation. They're doing their best. They're doing something I could never do. But did they really sit there and say, yeah, Trevor Williams, Zach Davies, this is going to be great? Old washed up Jake Arrieta, yeah, sure.
My big problem with Sunday's loss is people acting like it's Craig Kimbrell's fault. Craig Kimbrell has been great all year long.
No.
He gave up 1 run.
It wasn't even charged to him because of stupid Manfred ball. I loathe that rule. That is bastardized baseball. Get rid of it. Anyway, go ahead.
As a team, you gave up 13 runs. You can't put that on Craig Kimbrell.
You gave up 3 home runs in a row. And every time you scored, you gave 3 runs right back. And I get it. That place, Cincinnati's a shoebox. It's a Little League park. I get it. But come on. It's every game. The starters are lucky to go 4 innings. And I can't be mad at the bullpen anymore because they're forced to pitch 5 every game. And you got to give the bullpen a lot of credit for Saturday. They won that game for you. Zach Davies only went 4, and the bullpen came in and shut it the hell down. I don't It was so easy for me to be mad at the bullpen for so long. I can't be mad at the bullpen anymore. They have to bail out the starters every single game. The only thing I sincerely cannot blame the front office for this rotation is Kyle Hendricks. Nobody expected him to be off to this bad of a start. Nobody expected that. Nobody should have expected that. And you know what? Albert Alzolay, the more I watch him, the more I like him. Because he has actual stuff. He throws more than 91 miles an hour. He has movement on his pitches. He doesn't just throw dick balls in the middle of the zone.
And if you try to tell me, well, it was fun, Anthony Rizzo pitching to Freddie Freeman. No, it wasn't.
Nothing's fun about losing 10 to fucking nothing.
It's not fun. It's not fun when you have 3 position players having to pitch. You know that's a bad game.
Listen, if it was August in 2016 or any year where you were by far the best team and you were dominating and you had one terrible night, it's fun. Right now, it's not fun. It's not fun when you are in last place. You're getting your brains beat in, day out.
Yeah, when you are last place and you are fielding a team of players that you can't remember their names because you're like, well, they're just there to fill in this gap until Chris Bryant comes up, till, this guy comes up, that guy comes up. These are just stopgaps. All right, it is what it is. But you're getting your brains beat in when you have Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, Anthony Rizzo. Like, you have these players and you still can't score runs.
You know what the most frustrating thing about this whole thing is? We could be wasting an MVP level campaign from Chris Bryant. I cannot say enough about how good he has been this year.
He's been fantastic. And thank God we didn't trade him low in the offseason, because how much worse it would have been watching him have an MVP season for another team going, well, we got their 12th best prospect out of their farm system for him.
Yeah, if you trade a Cy Young runner-up who has 12 different pitches and can throw nearly 100 miles an hour for a bag of magic beans, imagine what you would get for Chris Bryant on low value. You would maybe get ketchup packets and a half-a-used mustard pack.
And the fact that they are not trying to re-sign him, they're trying to re-sign Javi Baez, is mind-boggling. Javi Baez, we've already seen the peak. He's never going to be better than he was. He has regressed. He is going to have the career high number of strikeouts this year.
He can still defend, and he can still hit the ball a very long way. But you're right. When you miss that many pitches, it's
the amount of money they paid him. You better be you can't just be a defender. You better be tearing the cover off the ball. He doesn't hit the ball enough. He doesn't walk enough. He doesn't make contact enough. It's one thing if you don't walk, if you make solid contact on the regular and you hit home runs. He is striking out way too much. The guy is batting .245 with a .781 OPS. How can you pay him $25 million a year?
If he was cutting down the strikeouts by about 10% and his OBP was about 330 and his batting average was about 270, yeah, absolutely. But he's missing the ball way too much. And
his OBP is 270.
Yeah, that's it. I know he's never going to be an on-base machine. He never was. He never will be. But you need better than that.
And honestly, I don't want to not have my teams back. But with the, was it Saturday where there was the fight?
Mm-hmm.
Is if you're the Cubs, you know what? You know how you fix that? Hit the goddamn ball. Don't go out there and yell and scream that the pitcher showed you up. You know how you fix that? You show up the pitcher. Launch one out into the bleachers. Score more runs. Don't lose 3-2. You lost 3-2. You should be.
No, they won
up.
3-2.
Oh, I'm sorry, they did. So they won 3-2. You're right, but still,
they actually did win.
They did win it, but you lost. You lost the day before. You lost the day after, and you got your brains beaten by the Braves. The Reds have terrible pitching. And you got to take advantage of that. Just go out there.
To be fair, they did in the last game, but they couldn't pitch.
It's just, I don't know. I don't know what to do with this team, man. And it's, I don't know what to say, because it's hard to be like, well, it's the manager's fault or whatever. You put together a shit team that we all said is going to be terrible, because you trotted out the same offense that you've trotted out the last several years, other than you switched up Jock Peterson for Kyle Schwarber. And you've, and then you put a far worse pitching unit out there. Your bullpen's terrible, and your rotation is terrible.
To save money. You could have done better. You could have kept Yu Darvish. You could have gotten some better starters. If you weren't going to completely tear it down, you could have done better. I'm so sick of these Cubs reclamation projects. In the past few years, they've almost never worked. And maybe in the early Theo years, you found a few diamonds in the rough, but they keep relying on that now, and it's not going to always work.
Jake Arrieta was the reclamation project that worked.
Yes, and that was a rare dime a dozen. When it comes to pitching, yes, I agree. That was the one that worked. Some of the bullpen guys did. Some of the bullpen guys did work out, but then, we're talking 2015.
Yeah, bullpens are crazy. They're, they're just, there's a lot of luck involved in getting a good bullpen, but
yes,
your starting rotation is not luck. If you trot out Kyle Hendricks, Zach Davies, 2021 Jake Arrieta, and Trevor Williams, and a guy from your farm system that you didn't know what you were getting, of course you're not going to have good results.
After you traded Yu Darvish for Magic Beans. I will never let them let that down. The trade was insulting.
It was. I'm okay if you trade a guy for prospects, but they better be prospects that you are really high on.
Yeah, not Magic Beans. And you know what? Those Magic Beans might grow into something we won't know for another few years.
Yeah, because those are all guys that bare minimum we'll see in 2023.
And the reason they made that trade, not to restock the farm system.
Save money.
It was to save money.
They didn't sell enough tchotchkes at Gallagher Way.
Right. Now, the only thing I might say is I hope Zach Davies can find some sort of groove. But it's always amazed me how Zach Davies was always to keep his ERA so good when his FIP and XFIP are always so much higher. But I do hope that he can pitch slightly better. I really like Trevor Williams, but man, I just don't think it's going to work. He had one really good year in 2018, and we thought, oh, this could be a next upcoming younger. And ever since then, he's been bad. He just has not pitched well. And you look at some of the starts where he looked, I'll give him credit. When he pitched in Atlanta, he was striking out a lot of guys. So, that looked good. And the matchup for him in Cincinnati was not great. But you look at some of his other starts. Start against the Brewers. Okay, the first one looks good in that. Then he got absolutely mauled by the Pirates. Then he pitched a game against the Mets where he got hit very hard but got pretty lucky throughout that game. He's going to be a guy he's literally a guy. He's going to pitch, and sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. But if you're trying to win, you can't have a rotation full of that. If you have a Zach Davies or a Trevor Williams as a 5-starter at the bottom of an elite rotation, fine. But you're trying to make these guys into bigger roles that they're not meant to be. And honestly, the only starts I look forward to these days are Adbert Alzolay. Until Kyle Hendricks figures it out. And I think he will. His pitching has been very alarming this year. Very alarming.
I do want to pause and talk about a non-Cubs player for a second.
Okay.
Joey Votto is really good.
He is one of the most irritating baseball players to face. Not personally, but just the way he plays. It is just so hard to retire him.
The guy's career, 300 home runs, 983 RBIs, 15.9% walk rate, a career 303 hitter with a 516 slugging.
It would be a real shame if that was just completely wasted.
56.8 career F4. The guy is stupid good.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
But yeah, I mean, back to the Cubs. This is just a garbage team, and I hate when people think, yeah, the Cubs will be okay. They'll make the playoffs. I'm like, no,
no, they're not.
Not
unless they get hot right now. I'm not putting my money on it.
So when you look at them through the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, they've had a pitcher that could stop a losing streak.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, this guy, I can count on them. That if we go on a 4-game losing streak, they'll stop it.
Whether it was Jake Arrieta in his prime, John Lester, Kyle Hendricks, or Yu Darvish.
Yep. And Yu Darvish is gone, and Jake Arrieta is not the same Jake Arrieta. John Lester plays for another team, and Kyle Hendricks has been flat out bad. Like, who bails you out? Like, you could just go on a perpetual losing streak, and luck would be the only thing that bails you out.
I mean, think about it. On this road trip, they could have had 2-3 more wins if the pitching was just halfway decent.
Yeah.
That first game in Atlanta, that 8-7 loss, Zach Davies doesn't get torched early, and he pitches, let's say he goes 5 or 6 innings, gives up 3, you win that game.
I like that game because the Cubs had more runs than they had hits.
And again, Chris Bryant coming in huge with a grand slam.
Yeah. So you're not winning Tuesday or Wednesday. You just you won Thursday. Friday's game you should have won with a little bit of pitching. Arrieta was woof, and then Sunday, just terrible.
And it wasn't just the starting pitcher; it was everybody Sunday. Everybody was giving up runs.
Yeah, that was just giving everybody. It's like Oprah with prizes. You get a run, and you get a run.
Yeah, Sean, I said it once. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to just repeat this over and over and over. Watching Chris Bryant's efforts go to waste is what pisses me off more than anything. Chris Bryant had a double and 2 home runs on Sunday. Ian Happ had an epic game-tying 3-run homer. Baez and Rizzo homered. All for naught. The first game in Atlanta, Chris Bryant hit a grand slam. Wilson Contreras hit one like 450-plus feet. All for naught. Nico Horner has been awesome. All for naught. He drove in the game-winning one Saturday. But the offense is actually clicking somewhat, and it's all for naught. And if you would have had last year's pitching staff, those would have been wins.
But let's.
And
sorry. Go ahead.
I want one last thing. I really want to reiterate. I don't want to personally attack any of these guys, but the front office and ownership cannot try to preach that this is a good team and everything's good when it's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bad team.
You have pitching staff in positions they shouldn't be in. Zach Davies and Trevor Williams are low the end rotation guys on a good rotation at most. That's who they are at this point. And
the thing is, they're a bad team on every way you can, statistics, standings and the record standings, the eyeball test. There's no way you can try to justify that they're not a bad team because everything that you can measure says they're bad.
And like in years past, it's very frustrating that when one guy is mashing, the other guy goes to a slump, and vice versa. Chris Bryant's been great. Nico Horner's been great. Outside of Sunday's game, Ian Happ has really struggled. And then look at last year. It was like the exact opposite. Bryant was really struggling, and Ian Happ was their best player. It's like they can never click at the same time.
It's just frustrating. It's just, and we got a lot of baseball left to play.
Yes, we do.
This is just going to be a long season because this isn't even part of the rebuild. We're not in the rebuild yet. We are in the limbo. So we have to bear through the limbo. And then when they go, you know what? This is not working. And I think this is not going to be the last year of this. I think they're going to keep trying to rebuild on the fly. They're going to be like, we've got some guys coming up from the farm system. We'll have a little more money to spend.
And that's the thing. If you're going to do that, spend some damn money. Bring in some actual ball players in here. Don't bring in washed up has-beens or reclamation projects. Enough of that crap.
But let's wrap this up with speed round of Bulls and Blackhawks.
Honestly, all I got to say is seasons are pretty much over. I'm ready for the off season.
Are you ready for fans to be able to go to the last two games for the Blackhawks?
I'm going to try to get tickets for the Sunday game for the Blackhawks. I'm going to try.
They're terrible. They are just. We looked at the last bit of after we were like, all right, it's tough sledding. They got to beat the Predators in the series, and they didn't. We're like, it's going to be a real tough sled to catch up based on the schedule they have to finish the season. And here they are, 7-4 loss to the Lightning, 4-3 loss to the Panthers, 5-4 loss to the Panthers. What was it? A 5-2 loss tonight to Carolina.
5-3.
5-3.
Close
okay.
enough.
Yeah, it is bad. And
they've regressed to the mean.
I feel bad. I still think Lankinen is the goalie of the future. I just think he hit a wall, and part of it was the defense in front of him has been bad. Part of it is just like he just looks like he's tired. I guess the big question then is Jeremy Colleton the coach of this team next year?
My guess is yes. Do I think he should be? That's up for debate. I think Colleton tries to get the most out of them, and I think there's some things in the locker room that he might do well. But I think some of the other just coaching philosophies and other things, if you're going to take that next step, I think you need a more established coach, in my opinion.
Well, when you have a really young coach that you're worried about players respecting him because they're the same age, You just get rid of those old players and then have only young players, and it solves the problem.
Wow, look at that.
And the Bulls, it is Vooch and the bunch of scrubs that are not good.
Give me the off season with them. Give me the off season so we can have a full season with this new dynamic of Vooch and Zach LaVine and maybe some more established players.
Yeah, what just sucks is that, perfect scenario is because they gave up their first rounder for Vooch, but it's top 4 protected. Now, they're probably not going to make the playoffs. What would be amazing is if they won the draft lottery.
Oh my God. Wouldn't that be amazing?
So then they get their first rounder and they get top 4 pick, and you're like, all right, here we are with good front office and a top 4 pick again. Nice. And Vooch. But I guess my bummer with this team is nobody has stepped up. Patrick Williams is, I just think he hit that rookie wall hard.
Yeah.
And, he needs I think he's going to be a good player. I just think there's a lot of things he needs to work on in the off season, and his conditioning needs to be number 1. Kobe White is not the answer. And Lauri Markkanen just had so much opportunity with Zach LaVine being out to step the fuck up and be a player, and he's just wilted away. And he still keeps making comments like, I feel like I'm not a bench guy. I feel like I'm a starter in this league. Well, prove it. Prove it. What have you really done in the couple of weeks since Zach LaVine got COVID? Because Zach LaVine got COVID. He didn't get exposed. He got COVID.
Right. Yeah, I mean, look, I think the one thing that you can take away from Lauri Markkanen these past few months is, to me, it seems obvious that the ship has sailed, and I think that maybe there's a more confident decision saying, you know what, I think it's best for him and the organization that we part ways. Maybe he goes to another team and they bring the most out of him there, but wherever he's going to get the most out of, it's not going to be here. So, maybe this is just a way of saying, you know what, it's not meant to be here, and you can confidently make the decision to move on.
Yeah, I think that decision for Lauri Markkanen is he's not just gone, he's so gone.
I'd be absolutely floored if he was back next year at this point.
Agreed. There's a lot of room on this roster to get better. I do like Tice. I think he's a tough defender. I think there's room for him on this team. You need a point guard. You need Patrick. You need P. Will to be the guy that you expected him to be. There's a lot of room here for them to get better.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think I've said my piece. I've been looking forward to doing this show for a while, and Justin Fields is a Chicago Bear.
It does feel good. I'm excited that we finally have a quarterback, and I just feel confident that this is the guy. And when it all is said and done, it's going to be so clear who the greatest quarterback in Bears franchise history is. And it's really sad that it's Jay Cutler at this point.
Can we make it soon that we're saying it's not Jay Cutler and it's Justin Fields?
Yeah,
please.
Honestly, it's not going to take that much, because in the 4 years that he was here, Mitchell Trubisky came close on some of those records to getting, you're like, if he plays like 2 more years, he might have some of these records. Like, that's how quarterback starved we are. I want Justin Fields to just destroy every record in passing record and quarterback rushing record that the Bears have ever had, and this be our guy for the next 15 years.
Put it in perspective. Andy Dalton, the man we brought in, would have been better if he had than any other Bears quarterback had he played here. He has done stuff that no other Bears quarterback has done, including having 4,000 plus passing yards in a season.
Yeah. And so, yeah, want Justin Fields to put up a 4,800 yard season next year. 4,800 yards.
And you'll be ladling the meatball sauce all over yourself.
Oh my God. I'm going to be,
pass.
like Scrooge McDuck goes swimming in gold coins. I'm just going to be swimming. I'm going to have a Speedo and flippers and the little diving goggles, and I'm just going to be swimming in meatball sauce.
And then after that, you're going to cool off with a nice glass of Kool-Aid with a big pitcher and the wooden spoon
clink,
that goes
clink,
clink,
clink.
clink, clink. It's going to be great.
But that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn, Google Play, Spotify, etc. However you listen to podcasts. Share this podcast with your friends. It's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. On Facebook, Alex Pat Sports Chat and Alex Pat Sports Chat wordpress.com. And thank you guys so much for listening, and until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Denver New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down, I wanna